Because democracy basically means government by the people, of the people, for the people. But the people are retarded.
And the budget will balance itself.
Do I have to sue CNN?
Legacy doesn't mean nothing. I'm gonna die and it's gonna be over.
Welcome, it's Hergidius. So we have several crises in Canada of housing, cost of living, shortage of doctors, excessive crime. Now job shortages are there and getting worse. This problem is directly exacerbated by the use of temporary foreign workers, or TFWs. And here is what the leader of the opposition, Pierre Poilievre, had to say about it on September 3.
Very much, everyone. Thank you, Michelle Rempel and Garnet Jenis, for your hard work on behalf of Canadians. We're here to bring hope to the hopeless. We have behind us some very talented and hardworking people who cannot get jobs here in Canada. And let's be honest, young people today form what I call Generation Screwed. Let's look at the situation for this generation. It is the first generation that cannot afford a home in Canadian history. And now, the double gut punch. They have the highest, or the worst employment numbers of any group of young people since the late 1990s. So you can't get a job, and even if you did have a job, you can never buy a home after 10 years of Liberal government. The Liberals doubled housing costs. They unleashed crime and chaos in our communities with their soft laws. They broke our immigration system by allowing too many, too fast, too easily to come into the country, and they have destroyed our economy by pushing investment out of our country. Now, let's look at the facts here. The unemployment rate for those aged 15 to 24 is now 14.6%. The employment rate, the share of young people who are employed, is at its lowest level in over a quarter century outside of the pandemic. 1.6 million Canadians were unemployed in July, 7.4% increase in unemployment insurance requests since Mr. Carney took office. Almost 400,000 Canadians have been continually searching for work for over 2 years, the highest share of long-term unemployment since 1998. There are 16,000 more people unemployed in Ontario than there were in the Great Recession. Ontario has seen a massive increase in job losses and a massive decrease in home building. Nearly 75% of temporary foreign workers that come into the country are for low-wage positions, which means they compete with working class and young people that ultimately drive down wages and drive away jobs. Tim Hortons has hired an unimaginable 1,131% more temporary foreign workers in the last 4 years. In the first half of this year alone, the TFW program has imported 74% more low-skilled labor than in all of 2015. TFWs, the number of temporary foreign workers, is now 2% of our overall workforce, and a staggering number, an unprecedented number. Now, the Liberals promised they would cap the temporary foreign worker program at 82,000, but in the first 6 months, they've already handed out 105,000 permits. To put this into perspective, if they do the same number of permits for temporary foreign workers in the next 6 months that they did in the last, they will break the record again with over 200,000 temporary foreign workers coming in to take jobs when our own young people are facing record unemployment. The Liberals have to answer, why is it that they're shutting our own youth out of jobs and replacing them with low-wage temporary foreign workers from poor countries who are ultimately being exploited?
So that's an amazing round of stats there, with some of the key ones being 75% of the TFWs are now low-wage positions, of where they're directly competing with low-skilled and entry-level Canadians. And at a time where there basically are no jobs, TFWs still make up 2% of the total workforce. And private companies like Tim Hortons, have increased their use of TFWs by over 1,000% in just 4 years. Damn. Now the latest job data has come in as reported by me here, as reported today on September 5. So the unemployment rate in July was 6.9, in August we ticked up to 7.1%, and the forecast was only 7%. The employment change, so in July we lost 40,800 jobs, in August we lost an additional 65,500 jobs, when the forecast for August was actually gaining 4,900 jobs. This is a total fucking disaster. Here's a post by Poilievre emphasizing how ridiculous our jobs policy is. Canadian jobs lost this summer, 106,000. Yep. Number of temporary foreign workers, Carney approved in 2025, 105,000. So almost a perfect match to the jobs that we lost. A completely nonsensical policy. Moving on, we have a post here on X from President Trump lamenting the loss of India and Russia to the deepest, darkest China, as he put it. Here's a clip from Trump's Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnik about what he would like to see from India.
Other issues and India. This came from the president this morning on social media. It looks like we've lost India and Russia, for that matter, to deepest, darkest China. May they have a long and prosperous future together. This relationship between the US and India has clearly soured. You yourself said earlier this year that India rubbed the US the wrong way. There's an understandable tension that continues to build. But they're not the only ones buying Russian energy. The Chinese are buying Russian energy, and for that matter, the Europeans too. And I think there's a sense from the Indian side, Mr. Secretary, that they feel singled out, perhaps unfairly. What's your comment, your message for them this morning?
Well, remember, before the Russian conflict, the Indians bought less than 2% of their oil from Russia. Less than 2%. And now they're buying 40% of their oil from Russia. What they're doing is, because the oil is sanctioned, it's really, really cheap because the Russians are trying to find people to buy it. And so the Indians have just decided, the heck with it. Let's buy it cheap and make a ton of money. But you know what? That is just plain wrong. It's ridiculous, and they either need to decide which side they want to be on. You know, what's funny is, remember, the Chinese sell. The Chinese, well, we're always willing to talk. The Chinese sell to us. The Indians sell to us. They're not going to be able to sell to each other. We are the consumer of the world. People have to remember, it's our $30 trillion economy that is the consumer of the world. So eventually they all have to come back to the customer, because we all know eventually the customer is always right.
When you are talking with India, Mr. Secretary, I know a lot of companies in the U.S. have shifted manufacturing to India from China, so there's a real interest in this in terms of their costs. How much do you feel like you've lost leverage as a result of the court case that came out fairly recently?
We haven't lost anything with respect to the court case. If you look at the dissent, right, it was 7-4. Read the dissent. The current Chief Justice sided with President Trump. The former Chief Justice sided with President Trump. And the incoming Chief Justice sided with President Trump. And the smartest guy on the bench, which is well known who the smartest guy on the bench is, he sided with Donald Trump. So I think you are going to see the Supreme Court side with Donald Trump. And I don't think we've lost leverage. What we've lost is that India doesn't yet want to open their market, stop buying Russian oil, right? And stop being a part of BRICS, right? They're the vowel between Russia and China. If that's who you want to be, go be it. But either support the dollar, support the United States of America, support your biggest client, who is the American consumer, or I guess you're going to pay a 50% tariff, and let's see how long this lasts.
So as I point out in my X post on the matter, what he really means is this, is basically he wants complete submission from India. India began buying Russian oil in 2022 after the invasion at the request of the US Treasury Secretary at the time to keep oil prices down as the US and EU diverted their oil purchase away from Russia. It turned out it was a great deal for India as the oil was in the $50 to $60 per barrel range with much cheaper transportation costs. Now the US demands India stop all Russian oil purchases and withdraw from BRICS. Even if they did that, that still wouldn't be good enough for them. The idea is to make India a submissive vassal state. If India did that, it would also be expected to invest $500 billion or more directly in America, much like Japan, and still accept at least a 15% tariff. Also, India would be expected to purchase all of its military jets from the USA, paying more than double the price for F-35s while being on the hook for permanently higher maintenance costs, all the while the US maintains control over the gear as technology and control is not transferred. The Russian Su-57s are less than half the cost, faster, more agile, less radar tech, but much cheaper to maintain, and are handed over with control control. Let's not forget that Trump regime is working with Pakistan to develop its shale oil and funding Pakistan with nearly $400 million to maintain its F-16 fighter jet fleet and providing an additional $845 million in U.S. aid. In other words, Pakistan is well-resourced to continue attacking Indians through its terror network. This is completely one-sided and unrealistic. India has no incentive to play Russian roulette with 5 of the 6 chambers loaded. The Trump regime needs to do better or needs to mind its own business. However, despite anti-Indian sentiment coming from the American people and government, as of late, I do have to give props where it's due. Depending on the year, there are anywhere from 80 to 110,000 or so drug overdoses in America, with the importation of fentanyl really keeping those numbers strong. The current Trump regime has decided that foreign drug cartels and organizations no longer have the right to profit from so much death and destruction in America and has begun using its military to fight back, as shown here. It said 11 smugglers from Venezuela were killed in the attack. Damn. Is that ever a message to Venezuela and all other foreign-based drug smugglers that you will be treated the same as ISIS is in the Middle East, so fuck with us at your own risk? This is what taking control looks like. This is what true and real leadership looks like. This is what every competent and sovereign nation should act like to safeguard its society. Thanks for joining me today, folks. If you enjoyed this broadcast, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. I'll catch you later.